Hello everyone and welcome to Chess5, and today I'm going to show you the game between Hikaru Nakamura versus Wesley So. And the main purpose of showing you this game here is today all of those who don't know how to play the King's Indian defense, after watching this video, this game, you are going to fall in love with the King's Indian defense, because the way Hikaru Nakamura played the King's Indian defense with the black pieces was just phenomenal. And yeah, this game is perhaps one of the best game of Hikaru Nakamura's life. And after watching the game, if you don't know how to play the King's Indian defense, it would be a great tutorial for all of you to learn how to play it. And yeah, the game is going to be very interesting. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching Chess5. So this game was from the Sinquefield Cup, played in 2015, and yeah, this game was played in St. Louis, USA. In the game, Wesley So is white and Hikaru Nakamura is black. So let's check it out what happened in the game. So Wesley So with the white pieces started with 1 d4, and Hikaru Nakamura with the black pieces replied with knight to f6. We have c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, e4, and now we have d6. So okay, now we are in the King's Indian defense classical territory. This is the classical position which happens in every King's Indian defense game. So after d6, Wesley So replied with knight f3. So this is the classical standard variation of the King's Indian defense. We have castle by black, bishop e2, we have e5 by black, and after e5, Wesley So castled here. And everyone who is thinking, why can't white capture in this position? Because of capture, black can capture, and white knight can capture the pawn on e5. You can go for this position, but after capture, black can play knight into e4. Now black can also capture the pawn. And if you will try to capture the knight, I'm going to first capture the queen, and after bishop into d1, bishop into e5. It's the material wise it's an equal position, but if I talk about the position, black is slightly better in this position, and yeah, it is completely playable position for both the sides, but black is definitely having an edge. So that's why nobody plays g into e5 and everybody plays castle in this position, because this is the most fundamental and the common line. So after castle we have knight to c6. And now white pushes the pawn. So this is the basic idea of black. He develops the knight and forces white to push the pawn advance further, and this is the best move for white also. So after d5 we have knight to e7, knight to e1, and now we have knight to d7 by black. So yeah, everyone will be thinking that the basic idea of chess here is to develop the pieces, so it's better to develop the bishop. Yeah, but this is the speciality of the King's Indian. At the place of development, you can undevelop the piece. Yeah, you just move the knight at that square. Now even the bishop is blocked. But the main idea of King's Indian defense in this position here is, the main idea here, black wants to open up the position with f5, creating pressure on the e4 pawn. And yeah, the main idea of King's Indian defense here is to attack the white king. This is why it's known as the King's Indian defense, because you attack on the king side. So yep, and if I talk about this pawn structure, you will look at it. Okay, we will discuss about it later. So after knight to d7 we have f3 by Wesley. So he's already preparing for f5. We have f5 by black. Now bishop to e3 by white, and now finally we have f4 by Hikaru Nakamura, hitting the bishop, and now it's a very nice pawn chain. So after bishop f2, okay, now let's begin. So if you see this pawn structure, the pawn structure is just like this way. And if I talk about the white pawn structure, white pawn structures are going over this way. So basically, fundamentally speaking, the pawn structure defines the attack very nicely. As you can see, black pawn structures are going like this way, so it's easier for black to attack on the king side because the pawn structures is going this way. And if I talk about white pawn structure is going this way, so it's better for white to attack on the queen side. So we are going to see Wesley So is going to attack on the queen side, and Hikaru Nakamura is going to play on the king side. So let's see what happens in the game. So after bishop f2 we have g5 by black, so already preparing for the attack. We have knight to d3, knight to g6. Now finally we have c5 by white. So as I told you, now as the pawn structure looks this way, so Wesley So is going to attack on the queen side. He's going to play on the queen side, and Hikaru Nakamura is going to play on the king side. We have knight to f6, rook to c1, rook to f7, giving some protection to the pawn on c7. We have king h1, so that if Wesley So ever wants to play rook g1, g3, stuff like that, he can go for it. So after king h1 we have h5 by Hikaru Nakamura. So after h5 definitely he's preparing for g4, there is no doubt about it. We have a pawn trade, knight to b5, a6 hitting the knight, knight went back to a3. We have b5 by black, and now we have rook to c6 by white. Just entering with the rook, putting some pressure on the pawn on d6, even putting some pressure on the pawn on a6. And now we have g4 by Hikaru Nakamura. Finally, it's going to be attack. So after g4 we have queen to c2 by white. If white tries to capture the pawn on g4 with the f pawn, and after h into g4, black is already winning in this position. The reason here is, black is going to play a very strong move in the future, which is g3 in the position. And after g3 he can even sacrifice a pawn, but the white king would be just very much in trouble. Black can continue the attack with bishop h6, rook h7, or he can even join with the queen by playing queen e7, queen g7, queen h6, and it's going to be a very deadly attack, and it's already game over for white. So that is the reason white is so much afraid of trading the pawns. That's why after g4, at the place of trading the materials, Wesley So played queen c2. We have queen f8, rook to c1, bishop to d7 hitting the rook. We have rook c7, bishop to h6, bishop to e1, and now we have h4 by Hikaru Nakamura. He's just going for it. Perhaps the serious plan could be to play h3, because it hits both the pawn f3 as well as on g2 pawn. So let's see, the game is going to be very interesting. So finally we have an exchange of pawn here. We have f into g4 by Wesley So, and after f into g4, all of you who you were thinking that okay, now bishop will capture the pawn and the game will resume. No, because capturing of the pawn on g4 is not the right way to continue the position. Because if you try to capture the bishop, then I'm going to play bishop into g4. After knight into g4, I can capture the rook on f7. After queen into f7, I can play queen to c7, going to trade the queens. So if you will try to play rook f8, I can trade the queens, and after trading the queens, if you look the position closely, there is no queens, and now there is no meaning of attacking on the king side as you are having no queen. So how will you just proceed your attack? If you want to attack, you need the queens on the board. It's compulsory. It makes a major difference. That's why bishop into g4 is a bad idea. And at the place of, obviously Hikaru Nakamura saw it, and at the place of capturing the pawn, he played a phenomenal move. So I want all of you guys to think a bit and tell me what will you play in this position. I'll give you a couple of seconds. So okay, so all of those well thought very nicely. I think you have definitely found this move, which is f3. Fantastic if you found it. The idea is very simple. You are hitting the bishop as well as the pawn, as well as the bishop on h6 is looking at the rook on c1. All those who are thinking h3, why not h3? It is also very nice. Yeah, it's also very nice, but after h3 white can play bishop f3. After capture, white can capture the pawn, but still engine says that it's better for black. Definitely it's better for black, but practically speaking, I think white is just holding the position. So that's why h3 is definitely a very nice move, but f3 is just completely over, hitting the bishop pawn as well as the rook. So after f3 we have g into f3. If you try to capture the pawn with the bishop, now it's losing completely because I'm going to play bishop into rook. First I'm going to capture the rook. After knight into c1, I'm going to capture the pawn on g4, and it's over for white. Yeah, I've just captured everything, and still the attack is not over. Black is still going to attack, and black is even materially plus, and it's over. That's why capturing with the bishop at the place of white should capture with the pawn, so that now the f pawn is protecting the pawn on g4. After f into g3, after g into f3, black played knight into e4. Now this is the coolness of the King's Indian defense. You can go all in. You can just sacrifice everything to give an attack. All those who were thinking why not to capture the rook, you can definitely go for it, but then it will give an advantage to white. The reason here is you should not capture the rook. If you look closely, the bishop on h6 is doing much more than comparatively the rook on c1. The rook on c1 is just doing nothing, just sitting over there. But if I talk about the bishop on h6, it can come at f4 or perhaps or e3, covering this critical g1 square, and this makes a lot of difference. That's why you should not capture the rook, and you should need to keep the tension. Because that's after f into g3, g to f3. Hikaru Nakamura played a brilliant move. He just captured the pawn on e4. And after knight to e4, if you try to capture the knight in the game, we had rook to d1. Wesley So protected the rook. If you try to capture the knight, it's game over, because I'm going to play a fantastic move, which is rook to f1 check, and you can't capture the rook because after queen into f1, it's game over. It's checkmate. So you have to play king to g2. After king g2, I'm going to play brilliant, the only move, which is bishop to e3. Now this is the importance of the bishop. After bishop e3, I'm going to there's a serious threat of playing rook g1, and it's game over. So if you try to capture the rook with the bishop, then I'm going to play h3 check. You are having options. You are having three options. Playing king g3 is the most natural move. After queen into f1, I just captured your bishop, and yeah, that's the point. After h3 check, it doesn't matter where you go, the bishop is hanging on f1. That's why when I'm going to capture the bishop, it's just mate in 4, and it's game over for white. And even if you try to capture the pawn on h3, I can still play queen f3 check, bishop g3, bishop into g4, and it's game over, checkmate. So that is the reason that after knight into e4, white didn't capture the knight, and he played rook to d1. After rook d1, the game is not over yet. Now comes another powerful move by Hikaru Nakamura, which is rook into f3. Now he sacrificed the rook. Now the knight is not hanging anymore. After rook into f3, we have rook into d7. He just captured the bishop. If you try to capture the rook, then I'm going to play queen into f3 check. If you try to play queen g2, which is the most natural move, you can see the rook is hanging. But I'm going to play bishop into g4. I'm not going to capture the rook. I'm going to capture the pawn. And after bishop into g4, the rook is just simply hanging. So if you try to defend the rook by playing a rook to a1, then I'm going to play queen f5. And now the game is already over. My serious threat is to play bishop f3, hitting the king as with the queen, and game is just completely over. You should resign. So that is the reason white didn't capture the rook, and he played rook into d7. He captured the bishop. Now black played rook to f1 check. Fantastic. You cannot capture the rook. Queen into f1 is checkmate. So white played king g2. We have bishop e3. Serious threat is rook g1. So here bishop g3 by Wesley So. If you try to capture the rook, I'm going to play h3 check, king into h3, queen f3 check, bishop g3, knight g5, the checkmate. So that is the reason bishop into f1 was not played, and we have bishop g3. Now white is hitting the rook, but black simply captured the bishop on g3. We have rook into f1. White captured the rook. Now we have knight h4 check by Hikaru Nakamura. White is having only one square. If you try to go on h1 g2 is already game over. That's why king h3. We have queen h6, fantastic move. Black is going to move the knight on the next move and going to give a discover powerful check. We have g5, knight into g5 check, king g4, knight to f3. Serious threat is can be to play queen h3 check, or even queen h4 check is already winning. We have knight f2, queen h4 check, king to f5. Now we have rook to f8 check. Now black just bring the final piece into the game, and it's just symphony on the board. Hitting the king. We have king g6, rook f6, gave up the rook for free. And now we have knight to e4 check, king g6, and now we have queen g5. On the move number 39, Hikaru Nakamura with the black pieces checkmated Wesley So with the black pieces. Just fantastic game played by both the players, but Hikaru Nakamura was on just another level. He just showed you how to play the King's Indian defense. It's fantastic, huh? So if you like this fantastic game, then please like to the video. I think this game was just superb. If anybody wants to learn this opening, you can definitely go for it, and you can share this video with your friends who also wants to play this aggressive opening, who wants to win like this, going to sacrifice all the pieces and just made your opponent in style. It's just awesome. So if you like this game and this style of playing, then you can copy it, and yeah, please like the video because of this fantastic game. And I'm going to come up with these more videos for you. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to crush King's Indian defense with the white pieces. So it's going to be a very awesome lecture. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching Chess Fight.